Hello and welcome. It's Bio here. So, I want to talk about Nintendo Switch 2, but I figured we'd play some Fortnite while we're talking about it. Um, so it has multiple problems, but it doesn't have anything to do with the console itself, right? Like, there might be one minor issue that people might have with like the the Switch 2's like battery life, but you know what? I kind of get it though. I mean, it's as good, if not better, as the original Nintendo Switch. But the thing about it is that I found is you also have to remember that battery life is dependent on the game, right? But the thing is generally, like I have a Switch too, so I just keep it plugged in pretty much at all times and just have it to where it doesn't charge over like 90 some odd percent or whatever, so then it keeps the battery good. Um, well, the thing is, you know, when you could play something like Cyberpunk 2077 on freaking handheld, that's insane. And the reason why is because, and not only that, but it's on a Nintendo system. It's like, dude, that's insane. Because when it comes to, um, like, I don't know, like the ROG Ally or something, or Steam Deck or something like that, apparently the Switch 2 is still, it's still, even on the game, superior to those other to the other handhelds, which, I prefer the Switch 2 over any of the other handhelds because of the fact that the other handheld consoles, they aren't really, they're more like the Xbox. They're pretty much just digital, right? And that sucks because, first of all, do you not like owning your game anymore? Or do you just. Because I know there's some people that prefer digital, that's completely fine. But at the same time, let me ask you something. Do you want to pay $80 for a game that is on a cartridge that's all there, or $80 for a digital game that they could take away from you at any point? And they can, and they will. Don't think that just because, oh, well, I think I own it digitally. No, you do not own any game digitally whatsoever. If you buy a game digital, you do not own it, period. And they could take it away from you at any point. They've done it to me and a lot of other people. So, don't think they won't take a game from you just because you bought it. Okay, now, however, if you buy a hard copy, so like Nintendo Switch or Nintendo Switch 2, if you buy the game and it has the, wow, dude. Anyways, if you buy the game and it's on the cartridge, right? Well, you own that, okay? You completely own that. And there's no way this guy's playing fair. But yeah, you completely own that. And the thing is you pay the same price, right? So you either pay the same price between the hard copy version or the digital version. But the difference is if you buy the hard copy version, you own that. They can't just take that away from you, and you would literally have to physically go and get rid of it, or somebody steals it or something. You own it. It's just a straight up fact. Like, you straight up own it, right? Well, the problem that Nintendo Switch 2 has isn't even the console. The console is amazing. The problem that it has is it's kind of funny because it has a problem and it doesn't have a problem, right? So because the problem it doesn't have is literally the opposite of Microsoft's Xbox, right? But the problem it does have is also the same problem that Microsoft Xbox has. So it's kind of funny how that works. The problem it doesn't have is selling the console, because the console is, in my eyes, just a really beefed up Nintendo Switch 1. Because, I see some people talk about how they think it's like going from the PS3 to PS4. No. They're so full of crap they play in it, or they can start their own crap factory. But the thing is how I look at it and how I actually perceive it and how I actually, the things I've noticed with it, it's kind of like going from a PS4 to a PS5. Not necessarily in the graphics department, but, it's close. I mean, there was one guy I seen where he was talking about how it's kind of like it's similar to like a Xbox Series S. I can agree with that. It's closer to like Series X and PS5, but in the sense of like a little dumbed down. So it's kind of similar to like the Series S. But that's not a bad thing, because of the fact that it's not on like unless you put it on a TV, it's not exactly on a really big screen or anything, right? So when you have it in handheld mode, it's not on a gigantic screen. It's a big screen, but not like, TV big or anything, you know what I mean? So, or even monitor big. But the thing is about it is the one thing that's ruining Nintendo is the one thing it's never been known for. And that is the fact that every time I go to like one of the game stores, a lot of the Switch 2 games I don't even want to buy. I go in there and I'm like, no freaking way I'm paying that. I'm not paying that price for a freaking key card. I want the cartridge. I want the cartridge with the game on it. I don't want no freaking... I'm not buying not one game. I don't care what game it is. Like Madden 26 as an example. I'll buy the PS5 version any day of the week. Why? Well, let's see. It's on the disc. It's not a key card. So, yeah, I'm going to buy the PS5 version of it any day of the week over the Switch 2 version. Why? Well, because the Switch 2 version, it's just the download and requires internet. And it's not a cartridge. Why would I want to buy it if it's not even a cartridge? There's no way I'm paying that kind of price, especially considering I can get a little bit better. I can get a better looking version of it. One, let's see, cheaper than I can the freaking Switch 2 version. So I can get the PS5 version of it cheaper than I can the Switch 2 version. And when it's on the disc, and two, it's better looking. So why would I want to buy the keycard version over a disc version that has it on the disc? Yes, see what I'm saying there? So, and I know they could put these games on those cartridges, because there's one reason why I wanted to get a Switch 2, and that is Cyberpunk 2077. And guess what? It's got a cartridge, and it's all on there. It's like a 64 gigabyte cartridge. So you're telling me you could put that game on there, but you can't put something like frickin' Madden 26 on there. Considering that even on console, like PS5, it doesn't come anywhere near that 100 gigabyte mark. I mean, I think if I remember correctly, it's barely even 50 gig. If I remember correctly. I mean, it could be a little bit bigger than 50 gig, but it's not, even like, say even if it's like 60 some odd gig, you realize they wouldn't have to do a whole lot for like a Switch 2 version, right? To put on a cartridge, considering that, Cyberpunk 2077 is on a cartridge, and it's the Ultimate Edition, and it's 64 gig. So, I'm just saying, but they can clearly do it. But, the thing is Nintendo themselves, as far as I can tell, like the Mario games and stuff, Donkey Kong, it all seems like it's all on the cartridge and don't require internet or nothing. But the thing is a lot of them third-party ones and very, very, very few of the not Nintendo-made ones, but certain games that have always just sort of been on Nintendo are not on cartridges. And it's like, wait a minute, why? I mean, they can clearly fit them on there, but that's the one thing that's going to ruin Nintendo if they do not fix it soon and start having all these freaking companies being like, hey, you got to put this crap on a cartridge. Plain and, simple. Because if you don't, you're not making money off of it. Like, that's the opposite problem that Microsoft has. So, Microsoft can't sell their systems, Nintendo can, but Nintendo can't sell the games. And, well, Microsoft can't sell all the games, but some games that are on, like, PS5 that's made by Microsoft sell. But, the one problem that the Nintendo Switch 2 has is the fact that there are a lot of Switch 2 games that just don't have a cartridge, and I'm not paying those prices for a freaking key card. I'm not. Why do I want to buy something that I'm not going to own for that price? That is just pointless. Now, the way I look at the Switch 2, however, the way I personally look at it is it's essentially a really beefed up Nintendo Switch 1 that plays Switch 1 games a lot better and has some Switch 2 games that it's like, okay, yeah, I do want to get like Cyberpunk or Animal Crossing because they're on the cartridge. They're not, games that are a key card, right? So there are some games, even like Metroid Prime 4, it's on a cartridge. It's not, a key card. So, it's like certain games is to me, it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, you do get a little bit of a bonus where some Switch 2 versions of the games are obviously better because they do take more advantage of the system and everything. But again, if you go in trying to buy a Switch 2 thinking, oh, sweet, I get all these upgraded games, blah, 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 no. Look at it more as a Switch 1 that's really beefed up. And I would suggest keeping your Switch 1 library unless there's, like Animal Crossing as an example. Sure, I would say upgrade to that, hard copy wise. If you have a Switch 1 version of it, I'd say upgrade to the hard copy Switch 2 version. Why? Well, because here's the thing. So that's what I did. I took my Animal Crossing New Horizons Switch 1 copy and ended up trading it towards the Switch 2 version. Now, let me explain to you, you're not losing anything when you do that. So, with the Switch 2 version of Animal Crossing New Horizons, you are still getting the Switch 1 version. So if you have a Switch 1, you can still plug it in and play it. Or if you have a Switch 2, you just get the upgrade. And it's actually on the cartridge. Like, you get the upgraded, it's on the cartridge. So, you're getting the Switch 2 and the Switch 1 version, so you're not losing anything. So, therefore, whenever you say like if you're on the Switch 1, well, one of these days you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to get a Switch 2. Well, there you go. You already got the Switch 2 version. You don't have to pay for an upgrade. Now, there's not a lot of games on the Switch right now, well, the Switch 2, that, is like how the Switch 1 is, where, Jesus, do you not miss, dude? I mean, seriously. I just love how people don't miss on here. Anyways, so... yeah, anyway, so the thing is when you look at a game that is like $80, whether you go cartridge or digital, well, the problem with the key card is it's a digital game at that point. Well, I personally do not want to pay $80 for a game that I don't own. You see what I'm saying? Why would I want to pay $80 for a game I'm not even going to own? It literally makes no sense to do that. Dang it, why you gotta come in and team, dude? Seriously. You're obviously teaming. You landed on me and then started taking me out. I would say that's probably teaming. Look at him, he's not even trying to fight the other guy. That's straight up teaming. Look. Didn't even try to fight the other dude. Just me. Just me. But, anyways, so, you know, Nintendo's never been known for having a system that just is like that, you know? Like, look back at anywhere from the Switch 1 to any previous Nintendo. It's not like that. You know what I mean? Like, they are not like that. And, now don't get me wrong. On the Switch 1, there are certain games that obviously do require like a download or something that requires internet, but that's because of how big it is. Well, the thing is those developers could have used a bigger cartridge. But instead they decided to, you know, be like, okay, we're just going to have it as a download, which is why those games aren't, you know, selling very well. Because you can go to the store and find, like, any of those. Any of the game stores you go to, you'll probably find a lot of games that just generally don't sell because of that. Because it's like, oh, well, you need to have, like, a micro SD card, but you gotta have, like, 20 or 30 gig free space. Okay. Okay. But the problem is it requires the download from the internet. So it's like, it kind of defeats the purpose of the cartridge. So, you know. And, you know, that's the one thing that's going to ruin Nintendo, because go online. Look at how many people are already complaining about it because of that issue, where it's like, oh, well, you want to go out and buy a cartridge, but yet you turn around and look at it and it's like, nope, sorry, it's a key card. Why, you couldn't have fit it on there like Madden 26? You could have fit that on the cartridge. Why not just do it that way? At least you know it'll sell. Because people especially are not going to buy, you know, like, let's put it this way. Take Madden 26 as a great example. You really gonna buy the Switch 2 version that doesn't look as good as, like, the PS5 version of it? That isn't even on a cartridge. It's just a freaking, you know, key card, like, over the PS5 version that's on the disc that you don't need internet for. Because I'm pretty sure that most people is going to buy the PS5 version over the Switch version. Well, one, I mean, first of all, when you look at a football game, people buy them because of the realism. Okay? So, it's not going to be as realistic or look as good on the Switch 2, obviously. Right? So, stop and think about this for a second. If it's not on the cartridge, what's the point of buying it? You're getting not as good of a looking version as a good looking. Oh my god, I can't talk. It's not as good of a good looking version as like the PS5, right? So when you think about, if you look at the PS5 or Series X version, you're thinking, okay, that looks amazing. That looks really, really good. But then you go to the Switch 2 and you're kind of like, nah, right? But, you know, the only catch is it's going to cost more and doesn't actually have a cartridge. So, which one are you really going to buy? If you have a PS5 and a Switch 2 like I do, are you going to buy the Switch 2 version or are you going to buy the PS5 version? Because, you know, if the Switch 2 version was on a cartridge, right, and it was slightly cheaper, you know, like say, you know, because the PS5 version of it, say brand new, when it first came out, it was like 69, so it's like 70 bucks, right? So if you put it down for 59 on the Switch 2 version of it, people will buy it if it's got the cartridge and it's like 59 because they know it's not going to look exactly the same like it would on a PS5 or Series X. And when you buy football, you buy for the simulation, not for the arcade feel or anything like that. You buy for the simulation. Now, for obvious reasons, you know it's not going to be as pretty as the PS5 or Series X version. So that right there should drop the price a little bit, right? So it should go from, you know, maybe $10 less. And then the fact that it's on a handheld, I mean, don't get me wrong, if they were to like have Madden 26 and it looks exactly the same as like the Series X or PS5 version, sure, you could still charge the $69 price. But the problem still persists of, if I'm going to pay the same price, why not just own it rather than just basically rent it? Because technically, I mean, I've bought in a lot of digital games, even on here, that I just apparently don't own anymore. And here's a good example, and you can go to my PlayStation and you can go, like, get on your PlayStation, look up my profile, and you can look at the daggone trophies, right? Like, if you look at my trophies, I'll go and check, make sure that you can look at them. But the thing is if you look at my trophies, you'll see that I actually have trophies for, what's it called? Let me see, Serious Sam Collection. It's like it's on PS4 essentially, but here's the problem. There is no hard copy version of it. It's just straight up digital. Now, obviously, if I've got trophies for it, how do you explain that if I didn't own it? And how come I don't own it now? Because they took it away. Why? I have no idea. But that's my point. It's a digital-only game. And I just magically, they want me to rebuy it all of a sudden. It's like, wait a minute. Why? That doesn't make any sense. I already bought it. You can see where I got frickin' trophies on it. Why in the crap am I gonna have... Why do I have to rebuy it again? So, you know, people think that, no, they won't take the games away from you when you buy them digitally. Yes, they freaking will. You're going to find that out one day if you just love buying digital. Look at how many people had to re-buy Call of Duty games. Because magically they don't own them anymore. Well, technically they never owned them in the first place unless it was hard copies, so there's that. But see, that's why I don't even buy Call of Duty games anymore, because, well, they're not even on a disc anymore. You literally plug the disc in and you still have to download the whole freaking game. It's plumb stupid. So I don't even buy Call of Duty games anymore. The only thing Call of Duty's surviving off of right now is literally Warzone. And once that dies, well, let's see. All three of those companies are going to be out of business. And that's just a fact. Because once Warzone dies, I mean, think about it. You have Infinity Ward, you have Sledgehammer Games, and then you have, oh crap, that other one. Oh man, I don't know why I can't remember that one. Oh, man, I don't know why I can't remember that one. Infinity Ward, Sledgehammer Games, and then the people behind like World at War and stuff, and Black Ops. Well, anyways, so the thing is they're all going to go out of business because none of their games anymore are on the disc. They're just pretty much all digital. And people already complained about having to rebuy their games again on the Call of Duty games. So think about think about that for a second, right? So it's like if you don't even own the game, and there's no possibility of being able to own it, you don't think that people are not gonna realize that one of these days and be like, well, I don't even own the game, I'm not gonna buy it. There's no point. Because they'll just take it away from me. I mean, heck, there's even Call of Duty games I own digitally, but oh wait, not anymore. Want me to rebuy them? Like, wait a minute, I had this one, I had that one, now all of a sudden I don't? But my point with it is Call of Duty games aren't the only ones doing that. And then on top of that, well, in case some of you may not know this, digital games tend to be like Nintendo games where they hold their price. And I'm talking like, you know, you could buy like a really old Call of Duty game and it's still going to cost you 50 or 60 bucks. Versus just going out buying a hard copy for like 10, 15, 20, 25, you know, something like that. I say 25 because it just depends on, especially when it comes to Call of Duty, it really depends on the Call of Duty game. If it's on a disc, which one it is specifically, because anything older than, well, I think World War II was like one of the very first ones to really fully do the internet requirement thing, because you can get some copies of Call of Duty Infinite Warfare where it actually says online play optional, even on the back of the case. So you can still technically play that one without internet right off the rip, so, you know. But the thing about it is, though, is the fact that it's like, even with some of the Call of Duty games after freaking Infinite Warfare, like World War II, it was still on a disc for the most part. But then they started just not putting it on there at all, and now it's just basically a license. So now you don't really get anything except for a... Wow, he just don't miss, does he? I love how people just don't know how to miss shots at all, you know? Look at that. Just magically out of nowhere, you just all of a sudden just hit everything. Anyways, though, so when you look at a lot, you know, a lot of people like me, I'm not paying all these expensive prices for a game that I'm not going to own. It's not going to happen. So that's where Nintendo's going to drop a lot of money. So Microsoft Xbox is not making money on their consoles or most of their games. Well, Nintendo's problem is they're not, it's not that they're not going to make money on their consoles. They'll make money on their consoles. But the one thing that they've always made money on was their games. But that's come to mostly a halt because most people would go out, everybody that's ever been on Nintendo, like even people nowadays, people that's on Nintendo generally want the cartridge, okay? It's just a fact. It's just like PlayStation. Most people that's on PlayStation want the hard copy. They want it on the disc, just like freaking Nintendo. Those are the two companies that we've always been able to rely on to, well, one, have the games either on a disc or cartridge, right? And not only that, but not do the whole internet requirements for the most part, right? Because that's one of the problems with Xbox, is all of the internet requirements You try to explain this to frickin' Microsoft, and it goes in one ear out the other, and yet they're still losing money. I wonder why. Let's see. Maybe because of all the internet-related bullcrap that you don't have a choice on, that they literally force you. You don't own it. If you buy an Xbox, you don't own it. If you cannot play offline right off the frickin' rip on a game console with no internet, you don't own it. The only thing you own at that point is a paperweight. Sometimes a very expensive paperweight, like Xbox, but, you know, for the most part, it's a freaking paperweight. Because, you know, I went over a year without having internet. Guess what? I survived. I can do it without internet. I don't care about internet. I can survive without it. So, that's my point. If I choose to say, screw it, I don't want internet, guess what? I'm shutting it off. But the difference between me and a lot of people, I can still play my games. Why? Well, one, I don't buy games that are internet required. And two, they have to be either on a disc or cartridge. So there's that. And, just so everybody knows, you can set up a Nintendo Switch 2 without internet fully. It is literally just a Nintendo Switch 1, just really freaking beefed up. Because even when you turn the system on and everything, it looks exactly the same. I mean, everything is literally the same. Other than the hardware itself. You know, like the RAM, processor, all that stuff, you know, it's obviously, it's obviously very upgraded. But my point is, well, like, I've got Animal Crossing New Horizons for the Switch 2. Guess what? Don't need internet for it. It's on the cartridge. So, you see my point? And not only that, but 90% of the time that I'm gaming, I generally have the internet turned off on whatever it is. Outside of, like, the PS5. Because that I kind of have hardwired, so, you know. I just prefer it hardwired, so. But technically, I could turn it off. I just choose not to. With this particular, you know what I mean? Because it's hardwired, you know what I mean? It's like, and it's not relying on a battery life, obviously, so, you know. But, yeah, I mean, if you're buying a Nintendo Switch 2, don't buy it just because you want Switch 2 games. Because there's some that you'll want to buy because of where it's on the cartridge and everything. But look at it more as a very beefed up Switch 1 that basically does the same thing the PS5 does with PS4 games. I mean, here's a good example. I'll give you two really good examples. So, what the heck is it called? Oh, dang it. There's a game on PS4. There's got a third one and a fourth one. I'm trying to think of the name of it. Oh, crap. Just Cause 3. So, take Just Cause 3 as an example, okay? Play it on a base PS4. You tell me how well it plays. And then plug it into a PS5, and it's perfect. Has no issues. Performance-wise whatsoever. It's a solid 30 FPS. Perfect. Right? But if you plug it into a PS4, it's sort of, good lord. Did they, like, what in the crap? Like, it's barely playable. Right? So, that's the one example, but I'll tell you exactly another example, but this one's going to be on the Switch. It is Zelda Link's Awakening, okay? You play it on the Switch 1, you can play it. It is playable, but it drops frames like crazy. It's not very good performance-wise. Like, no, you're not like lagging all over the place, but like, let's say you're on the part where you have to take the dog on a walk. It's basically Chomp or whatever from like Mario, but anyways, when you take him on a walk and you go to like the swamp area, oh good lord, I mean you can see a difference. It's just a massive performance difference from where, like, if you take that versus like going in like a dungeon and going into this dungeon, the dungeon's gonna definitely work better by like a long shot. And then you have, also you have the fact that when you go, say, when you first go outside, you'll notice that it does have some frame rate dips, because you'll be walking around and it'll be fine 1 second and then kind of bloop, real slow the next second, and then fast again, and then slow again, and then fast again. And then it seems like it's kind of lagging, you know what I mean? It's just like all over the place. Right? But then you plug it into a Switch 2, guess what? Perfect. It just works perfect. It has no issues. No performance issues of any kind like that. So it's basically like going from a PS4 to a PS5. And in terms of performance, maybe not necessarily fully in graphics. Do the graphics look better? You know what? I think it depends on the game. But I'm going to tell you right now, I had which I gave to my girlfriend, I had a original Nintendo Switch with the updated battery life, and I gave that to her because it was like brand new. Well, I gave that to her when I got my Switch 2, and let me tell you, so when I played New Super Mario Bros. U on the first Switch versus the Switch 2, it just looks better. It's I want to say it's a smoother image, not smoother as in soft, but smoother as in like all the edges are smoothed out and this, that, and it's almost like the resolution of the game with the Switch 2's screen. It just like cleans it up. You know what I mean? It's like really weird. It just like cleans the image up, so it makes it look better. It's, you know, just way better. I don't know if it's like way better looking, but it's definitely cleaner. And maybe slightly clearer because of the fact that it's cleaner and stuff. So, you know, and that's a Switch 1 game. Now, the funny thing is I did have Super Mario Bros. Wonder, but I ended up trading it. But it actually looked better on the Switch 1 than it does the Switch 2. Which is, like, freaking super weird, because it is newer than New Super Mario Bros. U, but I don't know, I just, with Mario and Luigi and all of them turning into like an elephant, it just seems out of the, you know, outside of like the Mario world, because I've played a lot of Mario games and they generally don't do something like that, so it just, I don't know, it just felt kind of out of place, you know, because I've also got both of the Mario movies, and yeah, graphically it looks good, but, you know, it's just, I don't think they went all out with that one like they did with some of the other ones. I think they did in terms of like creativity, but not so much as everything else. I'm gonna try something here. So, yeah, anyways though, so I you know, I think by default if I remember correctly, I think by default, Mario Bros. Wonder, I think, had a higher resolution by default on the Switch one. So, you know, but I don't know what it is because they could have had the same resolution. But it's just weird because it still looks good on the Switch 2 screen. Like, it still looks completely fine, looks great, you know what I mean? It still looks clear, all that stuff. But, you know, it's just, it's weird how New Super Mario Bros. U actually looks a little bit better on the Switch 2 versus how Mario Bros. Wonder looks. You know what I mean? Because it's like, wait a minute, Mario Bros. Wonder kind of looks a little bit better on the first Switch than it does the second one. And I don't think it's necessarily down to like the screen size and resolution because of the fact that, again, like I said, you have to look at the fact that it's either going to have the same resolution or a slightly higher resolution on Wonder, as it does like on New Super Mario Bros. U. So, you know, but the thing is the fact that, you know, for me, it's like, it's just weird. But I don't know. Maybe New Super Mario Bros. U just scales better with it or something. I'm not totally sure, but I don't know. It just seems like it's cleaned up more and just looks better. On the Switch 2 than it does the Switch 1. So, but you know, the thing is, you know, a lot of games, like, it just fixes the performance problems plugging them into a Switch 2. And now, when it comes to the PS5, real quick, I would not suggest getting anything past a PS5 1200 model because, well, one, it costs more for a worse system. Now, some people might be like, how's it worse? They even got like a 6 nanometer chip or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, well, here's the thing. So the 1200 model and before do not require internet at all whatsoever to, you know, obviously play PS5 games and to set it up or nothing. Now, what I mean by that is, well, the PS5 Slim or Pro, anything after the PS5 1200 model, the problem it has is you have to connect to a server to use the Blu-ray drive, so it sort of defeats the entire purpose of the games. It's essentially an Xbox. So, honestly, if anybody, like, I don't care who in this entire planet would try to give me like a PS5 Slim or a Pro, I'm breaking it. I am destroying it completely. It is going to be so destroyed beyond repair that it's going to be completely destroyed, crushed, burned alive, the whole 9 yards. It is going to be destroyed completely. I don't care. I don't care if it's $5,000 for one. It'll get destroyed. Because it is useless, it is a piece of crap, and Sony went the opposite direction, which you would think that since Microsoft can't sell their freaking consoles, Sony wouldn't go the same route. But they were stupid enough and they did. So, now if you buy a PS5 1200 model or before, set it not vertically, but set it horizontal and enjoy it. Because guess what? It doesn't require internet, not even for the Blu-ray drive. You can reset the system, plug a freaking game in, install it, and play it. There is no need to connect to a freaking server just to use a freaking Blu-ray drive. Unless you're wanting to watch movies off of it, but that's understandable. It's kind of always been that way. I don't remember if the PS3 was that way, but I know the PS4 is where, you know, but something like that though, that's a little different because it's like, well, they sell Blu-ray players separately, so if you want to make sure that you can still sell the Blu-ray players instead of just selling a game console for people to just watch movies on, there's a couple like there's two downsides to watching movies like on a PS5, Series X, any game console that has a Blu-ray player. There is a downside to it, and it's a pretty massive downside. They don't scale the same way as a regular like Blu-ray player. So I have my own dedicated Blu-ray player because of the fact that it does not scale the same way. So we actually have the Home Alone collection on DVD as an example, or my favorite Martian, the one with Christopher Lloyd. So if you take either one of those, you plug them into like say PS5, PS4, or whatever. Here's what happens: it does not scale properly. So then it almost gives you this like 4:3 image in a way, even though it's not exactly a 4:3 image. It does give you an image that's similar to that. So it does screw it up because even though they say widescreen, they're not actually widescreen if you play it, say, like on a PS5, if you play it on a game console, it's not actually widescreen. So it does this like small, weird looking 4:3 box. But then, if I plug it into my Blu-ray player, however, guess what? They're actually widescreen. So yeah, it properly scales it when you do it on a Blu-ray player itself, like a dedicated Blu-ray player versus like a game console's Blu-ray player. So, but the thing is, though, is the internet requirement to use it on a game system, which I think is kind of stupid because it's like, well, it's not going to scale properly on everything, so it's kind of stupid to require internet for that particular thing. But at the same time, it's like, okay, whatever, I get it because of the fact that it's like, if you want to sell, Blu-ray players, because a Blu-ray player itself, like, the one I have, it's an LG, but I don't have to download anything. I don't have to download any updates or nothing. I could just straight up plug it in, plug the movie in, and friggin' watch it. That's it. Doesn't require anything. Doesn't require internet, nothing. So, I made sure before I got a Switch 2 that it didn't require internet. But, if they don't fix the games on a Switch 2, though, to actually be on cartridges, and, because right now, the only ones that I've noticed that are actually on a cartridge, outside of like Cyberpunk, there's very few third-party games that are on the cartridge. A lot of them seem to be just keycard. And then you have almost all of the actual Nintendo-branded games. They are actually on a cartridge that don't require internet or anything. So I mean, you do get that, but unless you are like, don't go into a Nintendo Switch thinking, oh, yeah, I get to play like Madden, I get to play like all these games that are like on a PS5 and Series X and stuff, and I get to play them on the road. Don't look at it like that. Look at it more as, like Mario games and, the Nintendo games that you can realistically do that way, Because if you go in thinking otherwise, then it's probably not going to turn out the way you thought it would. So, get out of here, right in your head. But, yeah, I wouldn't go in thinking, oh, I get to play all these different games on the road, Not really. You really don't. I mean, there's a few, like Cyberpunk, which is one of my favorite games, and I really want to get it, but the only problem with that one is I just feel like it's going to be a battery hog. So I wouldn't suggest playing that one unless it's plugged in, if you're going to play it for a long period of time. Because that game is a really good looking game. I mean, you know, the fact that you can play it on the Switch 2 is pretty wild to me because of the fact that it's like, look at the PS4 and Xbox One. It could barely, you know, it ran. I think personally it ran decent without updates. It just had some visual glitches and some parts where the frame rate would dip. But I think that with even that game, I feel like they could have put it on the first Nintendo Switch. I really do. I think they could have, but it would have been really dumbed down. More so than probably what it is on the Switch 2, because the Switch 2 is a lot more powerful than the Switch 1. Um, but, you know, the thing I think is when it comes to the Switch 2, I think the reason why some of the games actually look better on it, like Switch 1 games, is because of the fact that it's got like DLSS on it and stuff, which you don't really choose. So I think it's all automatic when it comes to that. And what that is it's essentially just, it takes lower resolutions and upscales them to make them look like they're higher resolutions. And it usually does a pretty good job. So, you know, I think that's probably what it comes down to when it comes to that. But I think very, very few games that are Switch 1, I think very few of them look worse on the Switch 2 because maybe they were like something, they just don't agree with like the DLSS or something, you know. It's probably got something to do with that, most likely. It just doesn't agree with it. But you know what? I'll tell you though, certain games like Fortnite and Apex Legends, like, dude, it's in the Switch 2. You know what? I'd rather be playing this game right now on the Switch 2 more so than I would the PS5. Even though I get 120 FPS on here, I would still probably rather play it on the friggin' Switch 2. It works that good. Like, it works just as good on the Switch 2 as it does the PS5. And if you play the Switch 1 version of Fortnite, I think it needs some work. Like it needs some work. Like it, yeah. Like it really needs some work. So, it's 30 FPS on the Switch 1. It's 60 FPS on the Switch 2. Now, I don't know if it is 120 FPS, like if you dock it or not, but it's a pretty solid 60 on the frickin' Switch 2, so, you know, it works really well on the Switch 2, so, you know, if you're somebody that wants to play like Fortnite on the go, Switch 2 is the best place to play it. So, and, you know, the thing about the Switch 2 is some people say that the sticks are basically just like the ones on the first Switch. Don't listen to them idiots. They're full of crap. And I'll straight call them out. They're idiots. They're full of crap because the sticks on a Switch 2 feel more aligned with like the PS5 or Series X. Well, more aligned with the PS5 controller, but look similar to like an Xbox controller because of the angle. You know, they're not like right next to each other. Like one of them's on like the bottom right corner and the other one's on the top left corner like an Xbox controller. So it's set up sort of similar to like an Xbox controller, but it's short like a Nintendo Switch 1 stick where it's not real tall. I think maybe it might be slightly taller than the Switch 1 sticks, but I can verify that it is definitely better than the Switch 1 sticks because they're so much smoother. When you take, and here's an example. So if you have a Switch 1 and a Switch 2 lying around, take the sticks on a Switch 1, push it all the way out, and then go around circles with it, right? When you do that, it just feels like a click, 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 going all the way around it, right? While the Switch 2 is not like that. It's real smooth. So, there's that. So yeah, it's just real smooth, like a PS5 controller. When you take it and move it around, it could be smoother than a PS5 controller. Because to me, it feels more along the lines of a Nacon, like one of the PS4 or PS5 or Series X controllers that is Nacon. Oh, I'm trying to think of it because I think it's like Nacon Revolution X for those Xbox, and then like Nacon Revolution 5 or something for like the PS5 and 4 possibly. So yeah, I mean, it feels more in line with like something like that in terms of like smoothness. So when you actually push the stick all the way out and just kind of go around circles with it, it's just so smooth. So the best explanation for it is, can you play first-person games and third-person games like Fortnite or like Call of Duty on it? Heck yeah. Yeah, or well, Apex Legends, more like it, but yeah. You can play it on a Switch 2, and it actually feels more natural. It feels more in line with like PS5 controller or something, you know? It just feels more natural than the Switch 1 did, because the Switch 1, like I said, if you push fully out and it goes around circles, and then you'll feel it just kind of click, 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 going all the way around. And it's not that way on a Switch 2. It just feels more like, you know, a controller. So, and then I think that, personally, I have medium-sized hands, and I feel like the Switch 2 just fits better in my hands than the Switch 1 does. I think the Switch 1 was made for, like, just small hands and really small hands, more so than medium and large hands, because, you know, when I play on a Switch 1, especially if I'm playing something like Fortnite or something, you get this feeling like it's like stressing your hands. You know what I mean? Like, you almost, like, it almost feels like you're pushing inwards on your hands, and it just feels like there's extra stress that shouldn't be there, you know, but is. So, you know, it can be uncomfortable, but then again, it depends on the game too, because there's some games where it's like, okay, it just, you know, works perfectly fine, looks good, and it doesn't really stress your hands. But, you know, some games do, some games don't. But on the Switch 2, it's not like that, because it is bigger and all that. So I don't know. It feels better to me, and it feels more like I'm holding a controller in my hands, comfortability wise, more so than the first Switch, because where the first Switch was just kind of small, like not necessarily on the screen size, but oh heck yeah, look at there, looky there, baby girl, yeah, look at that beautiful llama. Look at that beautiful llama. Llama, 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 ding dong. But, yeah, so, you know, it's just, I think the triggers are better on the Switch 2. And I think that the triggers are a lot better on the Switch 2, and so are the bumper buttons. Because that's one of the problems I have with, like, the first Switch, is the bumpers and the triggers, because it's like, I don't know, when I'm trying to use the bumpers, it just feels more stressful, if that makes sense, you know what I mean? It just feels more stressful and everything, and it's like, it just like makes my hands more tense, you know? And so the Switch 2 has a lot going for it in terms of hardware, but when it comes to the games, there's just not that many, which is still kind of understandable, because it's barely been out for a little over a year. And the fact that Um, you also have the fact that it's like, you know, the games, all these games that are key card, they're ruining Nintendo. They are just ruining the brand, and they're gonna ruin it forever because Nintendo fans. You don't even have to be a diehard Nintendo fan. Everybody that's ever played Nintendo, there is no keycard bullcrap. You know what I mean? You either have a cartridge or disc, and it's on it. You don't even generally have to install it either. So, it's just, plug and play type. So, I mean, how am I not out of that dude's freaking render distance? Like, seriously. Makes no sense. But, yeah, so I think when it comes down to it, and it comes down to the games that are just on the keycard, don't buy them. There's no point. You're just buying a digital game for the same price, and they could take it away from you anytime they want, so it's just pointless, Like, what is the point of buying that? And this guy is being a freaking douchebag, isn't he? Here, how about this? How about I jump out? I'll come down here, and I'll just shoot you out of your plane. And then this guy, he's trying to come up there. Being a little turd. Oh, whatever. Perfect aim. I'm getting shot at by the other friggin' dude. Look at this. He didn't miss not one shot on that guy. I bet he's using aimbot. Anyways, so yeah. I think that if Nintendo doesn't fix the whole cartridge problem with even the third-party companies, the developers that are just making all those games and just not putting them on a cartridge, I think they're going to be ruined, because the only reason right now to buy a Switch 2, there's only two reasons to buy a Nintendo Switch 2. One, to play your Switch 1 library, because they're all going to work better. They're all going to perform a lot better, and it's a little bit bigger screen. And two, only to play certain Switch 2 games that are obviously on a cartridge, such as like Animal Crossing New Horizons, the Switch 2 version, Cyberpunk 2077, Donkey Kong, Mario Kart, just certain games that are on the cartridge on the Switch 2. So, there's just not that many at the moment that are like that, though. So when it comes down to the Switch 2, I wouldn't buy it specifically just for like Switch 2 titles, because a lot of them you could buy on PS5 PS5, and it's actually on the disc and does not require internet, versus a key card and having to have internet. So, and the stupidest thing, when it comes to a handheld system like a Nintendo Switch 2, that destroys it. Because, first of all, what's the point of a handheld system? To take it on the go. So, you're driving down the road, you just bought a game, obviously you can't connect it to the internet. How do you download the game? If it's not a cartridge and it's a key card, how do you download the game? You have to wait until you get connected to an internet long enough to download that entire game. Does that really sound like it's not going to destroy the handheld? because that sounds like it's going to destroy the freaking handheld system. Like I said, I would not buy a Switch 2 specifically for Switch 2 games. Because, well, again, you're not always going to be connected to the internet. That's a fact when it comes to the handheld game systems. You are not always going to be connected to a freaking internet provider. It's not going to happen. Because the whole point of it is so you can take it out and go places and still play it. So unless Nintendo's going to go back to the Wii, GameCube, or, you know, those type of days where it was just a straight up console, unless they're going to go back to that, they need to fix the issue of a lot of these games not having cartridges. Because that's how they're going to get ruined. That is the one thing that's going to ruin Nintendo. Like, guess what? Okay, so you're telling me, you know, most people act like they don't own their Switch 2s because of how Nintendo's got it set up to where it's basically the same with like PlayStation and Xbox for years and years already. Where if you mod it or something, they could brick it or whatever. And it's like, you know what? That helps keep cheaters away. I mean, sure, a lot of people may like doing the whole, you know, modding it or something, and I get it, but if you're going to do something like that, you would have to keep it offline 24/7. You could not connect it to the internet. Right? So, but even then, they could probably still know. But the thing is even if they wouldn't know, that system would have to permanently be offline. Right? Because as soon as it touches the internet, guess what happens? That system's going nighty-night. So there's that. So, you know, but the thing is it's like, you know, again, the Switch 2 hardware is just awesome, but I don't like the games that don't have a cartridge. I think they're pointless. It's a freaking handheld system, for one, that you take places that you're obviously not going to be connected to the internet at all times with. It ruins not only just game preservation, but it literally ruins gaming, period. Because, well, think about it. Again, you go out, you buy a game, it just has the key card. Unless you are going to sit it, like, say you buy the game at Walmart, do you honestly think that you're going to want to sit there until it's completely downloaded? Really? You realize how long that would take, for one? And for two, like, say it's like a parent or somebody drove you there or whatever, and you didn't, you know what I mean? Or if you're on a very specific time frame, it's not going to work, is it? So, therefore, it ruins the freaking gaming. So if Nintendo does not actually say something to the developers and actually fix that problem and have them actually put it on a freaking cartridge, guess what? Nintendo is going to be just as dead as Microsoft. And that's a fact. Because everybody on Nintendo, they want the cartridge. Why do you think when you go to the store, there's so many copies of all these key-carded games, and you can't hardly find any of the cartridge versions of the games? Let's see. Maybe because everybody buys the cartridge games, and nobody buys the freaking key-card games. You ever think about that? So, of course, you're going to find more games in the store that require internet and require, you know, the key card crap. Because nobody wants to buy them. I know I sure as heck don't. I want to own my stuff. I want to buy the cartridge. I want to actually have it in my possession. I want to be able to own the frickin' thing. And unless frickin' Nintendo or PlayStation's going to come to my house and try to steal my freaking game that I paid for, hard copy wise, I'm pretty sure I own it at that point. But yeah, even the PS5 I have is the 1200 model. I don't need internet for it. I don't need internet for the Switch too, which is the only reason why I wanted to get it, because it's like, okay, so it's not like Xbox, but it is like Xbox in the terms of like the games, and obviously we know that the games aren't selling on Xbox. Wonder why. Maybe the fact that the games aren't on the discs. Maybe the fact that besides the games not being on the discs, maybe the fact that everything requires internet on the frickin' Xbox. I don't know. Because when you buy Xbox games, majority of the time, you still have to download them digitally. I could give you a few games that are actually on a Series X disc as an example, or on Xbox One discs, but you know, there's not as many as what you think. I mean, here's a few of them. Here's at least 3 of them that I could name off a hand that is on the disc, like say on Xbox Series X. Grand Theft Auto 5. But it has 2 discs on Series X and 1 disc on PS5. The Witcher 3 Complete Edition. And UFC 5. But you know what the problem is with that, though, is they're kind of pointless to be on the disc when you can't even play any of the games anyways without having an email address. I mean, even with PlayStation and Nintendo, guess what? I could just do an offline account and never even need to go online. That's the one biggest reason why I'm on PlayStation and Nintendo when it comes down to it. Because I don't need internet. I don't need to have an email address just to freaking play a game. Because the day that Sony or Nintendo does that, guess what? Not buying them anymore. So therefore, I'll just be playing essentially just retro. So if the PS6, when it comes out, okay, so if the PlayStation 6, when it comes out, if they decide to do what Xbox did, you know, all games aren't hardly on a disc, you need to email to even do anything, this, that, and the other, guess what? I ain't buying it. I'll just stick with the PS5, PS4, PS3, PS2. I'll stick with any of those any day of the week over a PlayStation 6. Because I don't give a crap if it's the best looking game in the world. I want to be able to play story-driven games. I want to be able to play other games and just have fun. That's why I have a PlayStation and a Nintendo. Because, well, think of the Nintendo as not only just like a family-friendly type of thing, but it's something you could play, you know, not so family-friendly games on, which is awesome, because they didn't used to be that way. But the thing is, though, is like if I want to just have fun playing like Mario or, you know, Mario Kart or something, you know what I mean? It's like I could just do it. I can't. There's not a lot of games on like PS5 and Series X that's like that. You know, it's like there's story-driven games, there's great fun games, and this, that, and the other. But you're not gonna get, you know, Mario Kart, right? Like you're not gonna get Super Mario Bros. Or Donkey Kong, or you see what I'm saying? Like there's just certain things you're not gonna get. So, you know, and you don't play like Mario Kart for story, obviously. I play it to get like all the gold or platinum trophies or whatever, you know, that you get for each race, is, you know, when you get first place and stuff on all of them. And then, yeah, I do it for that sort of thing, and for the fun of it, and for the memories, because, you know, when you go back and you think about, like family and some of the games and stuff you would play, you'd play stuff like Mario Kart, That'd be one of the things that you would play. Like, I still remember going back and playing Mario Kart for the Wii, but I remember playing a lot of Mario Kart for the Wii and a lot of Mario Kart Double Dash for GameCube with like my father and brother, sometimes our sister, the list kind of goes on, and you just you don't really get that all the time when it comes to like PlayStation or Xbox and stuff, like it's not always like that. No way. 81 for a headshot? Point blank? And he shoots out of his butthole? Yeah, okay, buddy. Shoot out of your butthole. I'm shooting, literally aiming at your head, shooting it, and hitting you for 81 with a blue tack, and you're hitting for like 150 plus with a green pump. Makes sense. And not only that, but you shot out of your butthole. Makes sense. I love how I have to physically aim at people, but other people can just like aim the complete opposite direction and still hit shots. You can have video proof of it and everything. Epic Games won't do anything about cheaters. The only thing Epic Games actually does is if they have a offensive name and you report it for an offensive name, they'll do something about that, but not anything about cheating. So you're screwed on that. Oh, excuse me. Anyways, I still think about, like even when I'd play like Mario with family and Mario Kart and different things like that, it's like I remember going and playing like Wii Sports on a Nintendo Wii, right? Like, but see, I think if you're gonna, because they made Switch Sports, which I kind of want to get, but then again, it's kind of like, I don't know. And the reason why is because if you're going to do something like that for a handheld system, you have to give it controls that work for a handheld system, not only for like a TV. Because when you look at Switch Sports, I mean, sure, you can do it on, like, in tabletop mode, but who wants to look at a little screen doing something like that in tabletop mode? That doesn't make any sense. So, there's two ways that people are going to play that. Either on the handheld screen, or, that dude's freaking aimbot, or they are going to plug it into a TV, right? Or monitor or something. But the thing is if you're going to play it handheld, they should have gave it handheld control. You know what I mean? Like, and they could have too, because, well, it's Switch Sports. You realize, we used to play a lot of sports games on the old Nintendo systems that clearly didn't have, motion controls. Bowling, golf. I mean, they could have set that game up to use actual handheld controls, There's plenty of buttons. They could have made it that way, but they didn't. And that, I think, is what sort of kind of ruined Switch Sports, because, the fact that you have to plug it into, like, a TV, or, because a lot of people like me, myself, I use a monitor, because I also have a PS5, and I'm doing 120 hertz VRR and everything else, so I don't want to have multiple screens set up just to freaking do, Switch Sports on this, or, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't want to have, like, the TV set up to do the Switch, the monitor to do the PS5, you know what I mean? And then whatever wasn't for the Blu-ray player. It just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to do it that way. Because the problem you're going to have is, where do you sit everything at that point? You know? So, that's one of the problems. Like, where the heck are you going to actually set everything, you know? So, yeah, I mean, I think if they would have gave Switch Sports actual controls and not just motion controls, essentially, I think it would have been more successful. It would have been just as successful as Wii Sports or Wii Sports Resort. Because, well, with Wii Sports or Wii Sports Resort, yeah, so you got a nunchuck and you have a Wiimote, okay? That's just the controllers. That's how it works. But for a Switch, that's not how it works. It can work that way, but most of the time, people on Switch are not actually... They're either playing in handheld or on their TV. And generally, even if they're playing on a TV, they usually have the Joy-Cons plugged into the controller thing, right? So, I mean, you see what I'm saying? So, yeah, I mean... But, you know, like I told the old lady, I said, look, Nintendo has enough time to fix these issues with the whole games not being on the cartridge thing. You know, they have plenty of time to fix it, but they are going to have to do it soon, because if not, and it just goes on for a long time, people are going to steer away from Nintendo. Because the problem with... So, the biggest problem with the Switch 2 when it comes to, like, the games... There's a lot of people that's like, I want to play Switch 2 games, right? But then, if they can't because they have to download or whatever because it's got a card instead of a cartridge, then most people are going to be steered away from it. Which means that a lot of the Switch 2 stuff just won't sell at that point, because even though the system itself is great, what happens with, you know, the rest of it? If it don't sell, well then... the console won't sell either at that point. Because that's what happened with Microsoft's Xbox. That's exactly what happened with Microsoft's Xbox. Because there were people that, you know, they didn't mind, you know, needing internet for the Xbox. Right? But then, you know, when they started sort of not putting games on discs, having to still download them from the Microsoft Store, people stop buying the games, the hard copy games, right? And there's just not as big of a digital fan base as there is with hard copies. There's a lot of people that love digital, but there's a lot more people that love hard copy. So when the games stop selling, because people had already figured out, well, the console requires internet, so then the sales on Xbox consoles just went once they realized it. But then the games, when they started doing the exact same thing, well, guess what? Nobody wants to buy the games anymore either on Xbox. So they can't make money. Even if they make another Xbox, if they don't take a step back and make it to where you could do offline without having to have an email, the games are on the discs and all that stuff, they're going to go out of business with that. Microsoft themselves won't go out of business. They'll just go out of business when it comes to, like, the Xbox. Well, you know, that's the one thing I was telling you about, like, with PlayStation, where it's like, well, with the PS5 Slim or the PS5 Pro, yeah, they're just essentially digital systems. That's all they are. Because if you cannot just play the games right off the rip and stuff, like with the PS5 1200 model, where it's like, okay, I bought it. If I buy it brand new, I don't have to connect it to a server to plug a game in and install it. I don't need internet or nothing, right? So that is not a digital system. Now, even if you look at a PS5 Slim or a Pro that has a disk drive, it's still a digital system. You're paying more for a complete digital system than you are for a complete hard copy system that does digital any freaking way. See, now I'm not going to say everybody out there is dumb, you know, in the world that buys game consoles, but there's a lot of freaking dumb people out there. Oh, I just want to buy the digital system. You can buy the hard copy system and still do digital. But you're able to do hard copy at that point too, though. So, am I missing something here? And it's generally not a big enough price difference to be like, well, I'm on a budget. No. No, it's generally not a big enough difference. If you go out and buy a PS5 Slim with a disk drive, it's not going to cost that much more than a PS5 without the disk drive. It's not going to cost that much. It's not a big enough price difference. However, with like my PS5, guess what? I can buy digital games. I can still play digital games. Look, I'm playing Fortnite. Did you know that my PS5 plays digital games? And I could do hard copy? And not only that, but my PS5 is actually cheaper than the Slim model that requires internet. So let me get this straight. I can do hard copy or digital, not need internet, at a cheaper price. Which one do you think I want to go with? Am I going to use my brains? Or am I just gonna be stupid? Let me figure this one out. Let's see. Hard copy, digital, doesn't need internet versus needs internet, and still a digital system that costs more. Let me see. Smart, stupid. Smart, stupid. I ain't gonna sugarcoat it. It's either smart or stupid. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. You're either smart or you're stupid. It's one of the two. It just is. Sure, I'm not all there. Sure, I'm half retarded, this, that, and the other. Blah, 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 blah. But, you know, so yeah. And I say that because if anybody tries to say, oh, he's making fun of dumb people, he's making fun of people who are stupid, like, I'm stupid. I'm half retarded. I'm not all there. You want to see the proof? Because you're going to feel kind of stupid once you look at it. But the thing is I am smart when it comes to certain things. But on everything else, I'm completely retarded. Those are just the facts. So, I ain't sugarcoating it. Like I said, I ain't going to sugarcoat it. So, basically what my point is between smart and stupid. Let's see. I can pay less for a system that I could do fully offline that does hard copy or digital versus buying a all digital system essentially. And not only that, but the all digital system costs more. Now some of you might be like, okay, but what about, you know, the space? You know, the internal drive's not as big as the, you know, Slim. Okay, let me explain to you. It's barely a difference. When you look at the size of some of these games, that's literally like a 1 or 2 game difference. Literally. So, I'm just saying. I'm pointing out the obvious. But it's literally like a 1 or 2 game difference. You can't sacrifice 1 or 2 game difference for something that's obviously better. I'm just saying that. Would that be smart or stupid? Because last time I checked, that'd be stupid if you can't do that. And the main reason for that is because, well, here's the thing. You can get an SSD for a PS5 that's 1 terabyte or bigger and get the full amount of that drive and it not break the bank. And what I mean by not breaking the bank is, well, you get a 1 terabyte SSD that's faster than even the frickin'... It was a frickin' llama. Anyways, it's faster than even the name brand SSD, the Western Digital for PS5. And that would be, what is it, the Samsung 990 Pro, I believe? And it's like 89 to 99 for a 1 terabyte. And it's faster than the name brand SSD, the Western Digital that Sony has licensed. Because those ones are only like, let's see. Here's the difference in speed. You have those ones, which are 6.1 gigabyte speed, versus the Samsung, which is 6.5 gigabyte per second speed. Let's see, which one's faster? You see what I'm saying here? Oh, come on, you freaking douchebag. That was mine and you know it. But yeah. So it's even faster. Costs less, is faster, and it's name brand because it's Samsung. So it's not like some super third party that nobody's even heard of. You see what I'm saying? So, yeah, I mean, just common sense. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people just don't think anymore. That's why there's some people that's like, they're out there buying PS5 Slims instead of the, PS5 like I have. That's why there's people out there sitting there, and I've seen it firsthand myself, where some of these people be trading this type of PS5, where it's the 1200 model, and they'll go and get a friggin' Slim. It's like, really? You realize you just downgraded, right? Like, literally, you downgraded. You didn't upgrade, you downgraded. Because I got some news for you. But even the PS5 Slims and Pros and all that, even those can still have problems setting them up vertical. So yeah, it still has that issue. You're not really fixing anything just because you get that. Am I gonna have to trap this guy or what? No freaking way. Dude, the trap just sat there and it didn't even go off. Until after he moved away from it. I'm like, what? Burst so freaking accurate too. And it's another one of them douchebags with a dot in his name. So yeah. I mean, Nintendo Switch, Nintendo, like, you gotta get your people, you gotta get all these developers to put cartridges. I'm telling you, you're gonna be ruined otherwise, because, yeah, people will still probably buy the console, but not for the reason what you think. They're probably just gonna buy the console just for the Switch 1 games to play better. I mean, when it comes down to it, it's pretty much what I did. Because, I mean, sure, I got Animal Crossing New Horizons Switch 2 version, hard copy, because it's on the cartridge and everything. So, yeah, it's worth it. If you're getting very particular games, or if you are... So, if you are just strictly Nintendo, and you don't buy, like, third-party games, yeah, you'll probably be fine with the Nintendo Switch 2, right? Because pretty much all those games that Nintendo's putting on there, Mario, Donkey Kong, all that type of stuff, yeah, it's all on cartridges. Which, thank God for that, but a lot of the third-party stuff, like, outside of, like, Cyberpunk, is just not on cartridges. They're on friggin' key cards, which are absolutely pointless. And you can't tell me they're not. Because, again, how could you? How could you tell me that a key card is good? Digital is good, especially on handheld, where you're obviously not always going to be connected to the internet. Explain to me how it's good. Because it's not. Digital is never good. Plus, they can take your crap away, too. They can, and you can even read, if you read about digital games and stuff, they even straight up tell you right in there, we could take it away from you at any frickin' time. Literally tells you that. Go frickin' read it. And if you can't read, have somebody else read it to you. If you have a hard time reading, again, have somebody else read it to you. Because these are the facts. So, like, here's an example. I think the PS5 version of Grand Theft Auto 5 is the best version you can get. Why? Well, because if you're like me and you have a 1200 model or before PS5, you don't need internet whatsoever. Plus, it's upgraded to the way they have Red Dead Redemption 2. The way they have the controls set up on there with like the aim assist and this, that, and the other, it's set up the same way on GTA 5 for PS5. But the other thing about that particular version, so there's a couple things about the PS5 version that makes it the best version. One, the trees and everything actually do move, like the wind's blowing, like the original PS3 360 version did. Because for some weird reason, with the PS4 and PS5 or PS4 and Xbox One version, the trees and stuff didn't react to the wind anymore. It's like they were static, and it's like, why? That's stupid, because if the last gen can handle it, why can't it? Doesn't make any sense. So, you got that. That's definitely better. And then, the absolute best thing about GTA 5 on PS5 is not necessarily a personal preference. It can come down to, if you have a history of seizures. So, on the PS4, Xbox One version, and before of Grand Theft Auto 5, you have this, every time you, like, eliminate somebody on there, like, it sort of, like, does this white flash kind of thing to it, and that could essentially cause seizures. Problem is you can't turn it off on any of the previous versions of the game, at least without an update. So if you update like the PS4 version of the game, yeah, they give you that setting. You could turn it off. However, by default, straight off the disc, you can't. You just have to deal with it being on. You cannot turn it off. And there's no wonder this guy's got a frickin' cheat. It was a frickin' medkit. You could have saved the campfire because you're not carrying medkits. You could have used the medkit real fast, saved the campfire because you could still use it later. No brains. People that have to cheat clearly have no brains. Anyways, so, yeah, that's what makes the PS5 version the best, is because it has that setting on there by default. So you could turn the screen kill effects off, and you could do it right off the disc. You don't have to update the game or nothing. I've actually tested all this out myself. So, yeah. So you don't have to update it or anything. You can do it right off the disc. You can't do that with any previous version. You know, because like even the PS4 version, you still have to update it to get that setting. So, yeah. But you know, with the PS5 version, first of all, you don't even need an email address or nothing. You know, you can play it strictly offline. You see what I'm saying here? It doesn't require internet. It's one disc, the whole 9 yards. Because there was actually some people that didn't even believe me when the PS5 came out, and I explained to them the discs are 100 gigabyte. They're like, no. Then they finally did some research because I explained to them the games are on the disc on PS5, and they didn't believe that they were. And I'm like, yeah, they're on the disc. These are 100 gigabyte freaking discs. So, you know, they found out that, yeah, that's true. They are 100 gigabyte discs. And they do put the games actually on them. They are 4K Blu-ray discs. So, but the thing is, though, is, you know, Nintendo is weird when it comes to its problems, right? Because it's like, it's got the problem that Microsoft has where they can't sell the games on a Nintendo Switch 2. And the reason is because they're not there. Nobody's going to pay freaking $80 for a game that's not even there. That you have to freaking buy digitally anyways, essentially. Because it's like, well, if it's a key card, it's a freaking key card. There's no cartridge. That means there's no game. You still have to download it digitally. Which is, I think is just pointless because it's like, I'm not paying that much for something like that. The only digital games I ever buy is if they're on sale and they're super freaking cheap. Literally. It's the only way I buy them. And most of the time I do that, it's only because it's like, well, you know what? At least it's a game I could check out, see if it's good. If I do like it, I'll buy the hard copy version. So that's generally why I do that. Unless it just doesn't have a hard copy version. Like, I think this one, I think Limited Run Games might have did this one. But, Grounded, I think you can buy a hard copy of it, but it's sort of one of those where it's like extremely low print. I think it might have been done by Limited Run Games, maybe. But yeah, that's one of the games I think you can technically buy hard copy, but you're not really supposed to be able to. Because it wasn't released that way. Minecraft was the same way. But, yeah, I'm not buying $80 digital games just so they could take them away from me. And because then I won't actually own them anyway. There's no point in paying that much money for something you're only gonna own anyways. Like, I want the physical cartridge. Because at least I know I frickin' own that. And it has to be obviously on there. Because it's just pointless otherwise. Because if it's not on the cartridge or the disc, it just kind of defeats the purpose of the frickin' disc or cartridge. Duh. Literally defeats the purpose. So, yeah, I think that, you know, Nintendo does have time to fix it. But if they don't, yeah, they're ruined. The only thing that they'll be able to sell is their consoles, and that's only if they basically just make it to where it's an upgraded version of the last gen system. That's the only way they'll be able to do it if they don't fix the problem. You know, like how the Switch 2 plays like the Switch 1 games, and they just, like, it's like the PS5 with PS4 games, it just sort of just works perfect. You know, like, if it had problem holding 30, if it had problem holding 60, wham bam, thank you ma'am, now it's fixed. You know, it's just, it doesn't have those performance problems anymore. So, you know, that's the thing it's got going for it, you know. So yeah, I mean, if they don't fix the problem, then I just don't see how they're going to make it in the gaming business anymore. Because at that point, unless it's just a strictly Nintendo person that is, you know, only buying Nintendo games, as in like Mario, Donkey Kong, certain things like that, because heck, I even seen a Sonic game that's a key card all of a sudden. It's like, nah, that's just stupid. So, you know, unless it's somebody that only buys like Mario or Donkey Kong or Mario Kart or something, you know, just something that is literally just straight up Nintendo. I mean, I got more Switch 1 games than I do Switch 2. Because, I mean, heck, I even see my girlfriend has what is it? She's got both of the Pac-Man games, like Repack and Repack 2. And, I think it was Repack or Repack 2 on the Switch 2, the Switch 2 version of it. It's a key card, but the one that she has, both of the copies that she has are both cartridge. So it's like, okay, so essentially it's sort of similar to how, I want to say it's kind of similar to how, if you look at Star Wars Jedi Survivor, you're better off buying the PS4 version because it does not require internet. The game is there, and it doesn't require internet. Now, if you buy the PS5 version, it requires internet because the full game is not there. It's not fully on the disc, so you got to download part of the game. So, but that is kind of understandable because, you know, them dipsticks decided to make the next-gen version of it like 150 freaking gig. So, that's not necessarily Sony's fault, so... But the point of it, though, is it's better to get the PS4 version of that game. Just like it is a better idea of getting the Pac-Man Repack games for the Switch rather than the Switch 2 if you want hard copy. Because obviously the Switch 2 version just isn't, there's not a cartridge. So, yeah, but yeah, I want to say that if Nintendo doesn't fix the problem, Nintendo is going to be ruined forever because of it. Because, you know, I mean, heck, even look at John from Digital Foundry. There's some games he'd rather play on the frickin' Switch 1 than he would the Switch 2. So, I ain't the only one. And there's a lot of people out there, especially people on Nintendo and PlayStation. Everybody that's always been on PlayStation and Nintendo, they always prefer hard copy, and they always prefer the game to actually be on the cartridge or disc. I mean, that's just a fact. This is how it's always been. That's never going to change unless, you know, you get a bunch of, you know, a generation to where it's a bunch of freaking idiots. That's the only way that's gonna happen. It would have to literally be a generation full of idiots. So, you know, but I can't, you know what? There's something else I want to bring up about Switch. I think that when it comes to Switch, certain games are just amazing. Like, Zelda, Link's Awakening, and Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town. Both of those games are remade, right? Because Zelda Link's Awakening was like a regular Game Boy game, okay? Literally, a freaking regular Game Boy game. And they remade it for the Switch. And it's awesome. Now, if you have the choice to play it on a Switch 1 or a Switch 2, I would say play it on a Switch 2. If you don't really have a choice, play it still. Because it's just that freaking good. You know, it might have some performance problems on the first Switch, but dude, trust me, you'll overlook those problems. You really will, because it's that good a game. And Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town is the same way. It's just that freaking good. But I don't know if it has any performance issues with that one, because I haven't played it on the Switch 1. I've only played it on the Switch 2. Now, Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town, actually, if I remember correctly, because it came out on Game Boy Advance in 2003. So at that particular time, I think they were still going by Harvest Moon. Now, a lot of people might be like, well, they still make Harvest Moon games. Not the original developers. The original developers make Story of Seasons now, not Harvest Moon. But it is essentially Harvest Moon, just a different name. So if you want Harvest Moon games, but you want the original developers, you got to go for the games that are called Story of Seasons, not Harvest Moon, because it's not made by the same people and it's not as good. So, you know, I think the original version of this game was actually called Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town, but now it's called Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town. But the thing is it is a remade game from a Game Boy Advance game, sort of similar to how Zelda Link's Awakening is a Game Boy game remade for the Switch. And I think they just absolutely did a great job with them. But, you know, if they want to do a lot of games that way, dude, you're more than welcome because, hey, it seems like these games that are being remade from original, like, Game Boy or Game Boy Advance versions, and then they're just remade for like the Switch, are just freaking awesome. Now, should they be full priced? I think yes and no. I think it depends on how good they do. I think if they do really good, like they did with Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town, or um, Link's Awakening, Zelda Link's Awakening, I think maybe, yeah, those should be full priced if they do good enough. But if they don't, because I think it should be priced in a way where it's like, it depends on how good you did. And you are going to know how good you did because, you know, the thing is when you remake the game, if you stick close to the how it was originally, but just upgrade the graphics and mechanics and just make more to it and don't really take anything away, but just like add more to it, then dude, people are gonna freaking love it because you know they want the more modern style, but they want the original, not necessarily the original feel, but you know, kind of they don't want to stray too far from it. Um, you know, so you know, but like make it more modern. You know what I mean? So you know, they can do really good, or they could do really crappy, or they could sort of do in between. It just kind of depends. But I think they should do more games like that because, well, one, it won't take them as long to do them, and they'll still turn out to be really good. So, and there's more of a chance of it actually being on a cartridge or disc or something. So, you know, there's that too. But yeah, if Nintendo does not fix the game cartridge problem with Switch 2 games, and a lot of them not having cartridges, they are going to forever just never be as good. But they're always gonna be sort of they will be forever ruined if they don't fix that problem. That's just a fact. Because look at Microsoft. they are forever ruined. That the two people that kept screwing things up are not even in there anymore. And unless they change it back to the way they used to be with like the 360 and the original Xbox, they're screwed. They got one last chance. And after that, if it ain't fixed, they're just going in the dumpster. Those are just the facts. You know, like they have one more chance. They got a new person in there, but they got one more chance to fix Xbox, and if they don't, then that's it. They're forever ruined completely. I mean, they're already ruined when it comes to the trust, obviously. They are completely ruined when it comes to trust. So, I mean, nobody's going to trust them. So it comes down to whether or not they do good on the next Xbox. And if they don't, and they don't make it to where it used to be, they're screwed. Xbox is forever dead at that point. I mean, because Xbox is pretty much dead now, but getting rid of the other two people, getting somebody else in there, if they could fix the problems like, the internet requirements, games not being on the discs, and, the list of crap, then if they fix all that, then guess what? They still have a chance that they can come back and rock. But will people trust them? No. But it's at least somewhat of a start. Not necessarily for, trusting them, but it technically would be a start in trust because it's like, okay, so now, people can at least start being like, you know what? They're actually listening to us. They're making an effort. They're trying to, they went back to the way it used to be where even if you have to still install the games, that's fine. But as long as the games are on a disc, you don't need internet to play the games. You don't have to have an email address just to freaking sign into the freaking to even play the game. You know what I mean? Do offline stuff. Because that's where the money's at. People can say, I don't care if anybody agrees with me or not, it's the truth. That is where the money's at. Because look at how many people complain about Call of Duty not being offline. I'm just pointing out the obvious, but it completely flopped. So there's that. And pretty much every game outside of freaking Rainbow Six Siege has flopped that has been either multiplayer only or online only. Here's a good example. Let's see. Diablo 4. What's the price tag of that game now? Like $20? And it was 70? And 250 or whatever? And how many people could play that game the first 2 weeks? Yeah. That's my point. For the first 2 weeks, you couldn't even hardly play that game. If at all. Because it was so screwed up. Because why? Because it required internet. People think they like spending all this money on a game that is internet required or online or multiplayer only or something. If it's free, like Fortnite, sure, I don't care because when they shut the servers down, who gives a crap? But if you're going to pay $70, $80 for a game that requires internet just so they can take it away from you or shut the servers down and whoops, sorry, can't play the game no more, then what's the point? There ain't no freaking point, is there? Why would you want to keep paying? It doesn't make any sense. You don't pay money to play a game that's just going to be shut down at any point. And if you actually look at the back of the cases, like here, I'll even read it to you. So, this is GTA 5. Now, they actually tell you that the very first thing you read when you start reading it, online features may be terminated at any time. That's the first thing you freaking read. So what that means is they could come out with the game, and at that same day, let's say it's like GTA 5 where it's got the online and offline, they can literally shut down everything on the online part of it the same day it comes out. It literally tells you that right on the back of it. Online features may be terminated at any time. That means if you buy it that day and it just came out that day, and they decide to turn the frickin' servers off, guess what? You can't say nothing. So you better hope and pray to God that it's not an online only game or an internet required game, because guess what? That includes, let's see, internet requirements, obviously, because it literally says online features. So anything that requires any online part of it, they could shut it off the same day it comes out, and then you can't do jack squat. So there's that. So, yeah, that's just the truth. So, this is one reason why I buy games that are offline or online or just offline. But they have to be on the disc or on the cartridge, because if they're not, and they shut the game down or shut the servers down at the very least, then you can't even play it. So then it was just a waste of freaking money. Then you're just out there wasting freaking money at that point. It's just pointless. If you're just going to give them your money, why don't you just go and give them your freaking money and say, here, I want to help you guys out. Even though I'm not buying anything from you, I want to give you money. We know that you are a company. We know that you have money, but we want to give you money just because we want to give you money. We know we're not getting anything out of it, but here you go. That only works for like homeless people and stuff, right? People that are truly homeless and or having a hard time. That's fine. That makes sense. Here, I want to help you out. Here's, 50, 60 bucks, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that's one thing. But if it's a game company, as an example, here, keep taking all this money that I could be helping somebody else with, and you're not giving me nothing other than something that you can literally take away from me or, shut down the same freaking day. No. You could take that same money and go help somebody that actually needs it. It does not make any sense to waste your money like that. Unless that game is on a disc or cartridge and it doesn't require internet, it's not worth it. Because at that point, the only thing you are doing is giving these companies your money for nothing. At least if you're giving that money to a homeless person or something, guess what? You're helping that person. You ain't helping these jokers. The only thing you're doing is freaking encouraging them idiots to sit there and make more bullcrap that you just gotta waste money on that you can't even play. Because if they shut the server down or whatever, guess what? Whoops, can't play it. Just pointing out the freaking obvious. So, yeah. And the next time anybody, and I really want everybody to think about this for a minute. The next time you go to a game store or Walmart or wherever, and you look at a game that literally states it's a key card, how about you think about taking that money and giving it to a homeless person? Trust me, you'll feel better about yourself doing that than you would be buying that piece of crap. Anyways, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and hop off of here and do a few things. And I might end up streaming again or just getting on the Switch 2 because, I do have Switch 1 games that they work a lot better, like Zelda Link's Awakening. Freaking love that game, but man, just being able to play it a lot better, it's just awesome. Performance-wise, it's just awesome. But it does actually, it's not quite as blurry as it is like on the Switch 1. So it does like fix that issue too. So it kind of takes the slight blurriness and it kind of pushes it out further. So that's pretty cool too. Um, but yeah, I mean, I do have a Switch 2 game. I haven't played the Switch 2 version of freaking Animal Crossing yet, but I really want to because it's supposed to have like higher resolution and this, that, and the other. I don't know, with that game already being a very good performer, even on the Switch 1, it didn't really have any performance issues. So outside of like obviously being a solid 30 FPS and raising the resolution and stuff, I mean, they added some little things and bumped up the resolution and different things like that. So, I mean, yeah, it'll obviously look better, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, I mean, you know, we'll see if it's really worth it or not. I mean, I mean, it's worth it one way or another because if you buy the Switch 2 version of certain games like Animal Crossing New Horizons, the Switch 2 edition, like here's what it even states on the front of it, and you got to look out for this. It even says includes the Nintendo Switch game and the Nintendo Switch 2 edition upgrade pack. So essentially, if you buy the Switch 2 version of Animal Crossing Nintendo Switch 2 edition, you're getting the Switch 1 version and the Switch 2 version on the cartridge. So that's amazing because the reason why that's amazing is because it's like, well, if you ever do have to fall back onto a Switch 1, you can still use it. You can still plug it in and play it. Now, for certain games such as like Kirby and the Forgotten Land, that one, that's a little more challenging to really want to buy the Switch 2 version if you don't have a Switch 2, even though you can play it in the Switch 1. The reason is because it does have DLC, but the DLC is only playable on the Switch 2. So it's like, and it cost a little bit more because it's like $80 for that one versus like 60 or whatever for the other for the Switch 1 version. So it's kind of like, I mean, yeah, you'll get the Switch 1 and 2 version and you'll get the DLC, but if it's being played on the Switch 1, I would suggest just buying the Switch 1 version of that particular game to save a bit of money, you know. But with a lot of these other games like Animal Crossing, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition, I mean, well, when you think about it, it's like the stuff that they added in it, like the little horn, okay, I get it. They changed some stuff slightly, added a couple little minor things, but it's not enough to where it's like I would rather pay for the Switch 1 version rather than a Switch 2 version and still get the Switch 1 version. You know what I mean? Not like the Kirby wise, you know what I mean? So it's like with this one, you could still buy the Switch 2 version and be okay with it, essentially. So, and it does actually come with a little book too on the Switch 2 version. The Switch 1 version I bought brand new and it didn't have one. So I bought both of them brand new, and the Switch 1 version didn't actually have this little booklet thing, which I think is something a little cool. I mean, when you open it up, it's like Nintendo Switch Online, blah, 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 a bunch of that bull crap, but the front part of it is just Animal Crossing New Horizons, Nintendo Switch 2. So it's pretty cool how it has that. But yeah, I mean, certain games, unless you have a Switch 2, I would say don't worry about buying a Switch 2 version of it just to get the Switch 1 version, unless you plan on upgrading to a Switch 2. So, like Kirby and the Forgotten Land, don't buy the Switch 2 version unless you plan on upgrading to the Nintendo Switch 2 version. You know what I mean? So, if you plan on buying a Nintendo Switch 2, I would say, yeah, go ahead and buy it because then you'll already have the upgrade to it and everything, plus the DLC and stuff. But if it's just if it's like very, 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 very hard to get a hold of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the Switch 1 version, only then would I say, maybe buy the Switch 2 version so you can play the Switch 1 version. But just remember when you look at the case and you're thinking, but it's got the DLC and this, that, and the other. Like, just remember you can't play that. So unless you're on the Switch 2. So yeah. But anyways, yeah. You know, the Switch 2 versions of games, I think they're only worth getting if one, it's on the cartridge, and two, if it's on the cartridge, and three, if it's on the cartridge. If it's like the Pac-Man repack or whatever, where it's like the Switch 1 version has the cartridge and then the Switch 2 is just a key card, don't even worry about buying the Switch 2 version. It's not going to be worth it at all. So, but anyways, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and hop off here. And if you guys enjoyed this one, please give it a big fat thumbs up. Maybe subscribe. If you do, please turn your post notifications on. Make sure to set them to all. Thanks for watching. Have a great and blessed day, and I'll catch you later.